So Kamala Harris has a habit of weird, inappropriate, strange laughter. And it often comes at moments where it shouldn't come, hence my point about it being inappropriate. When someone asked her about truancy violations, and she's giggling about the mom who has two kids who she was threatening with jail. Think about what I'm saying for the moment. And she's talking about this like this was a positive outcome. The mom is dirt poor. The mom is homeless. The mom has two kids. Kamala Harris is basically torturing the mom with potential of jail time, adding to her problems of, homelessness with this other added problem of trying to get her kids to go to school. But again, the issue is the homelessness. And yet, when she recounts this, she's giggling as she recounts it. Or the people that she was putting in jail for marijuana, for pot. And then when asked about it, was giggling, like just was giggling silly about her either trying it or something like that, but the people being in jail for it. I guess I'm making the point that she has a habit of giggling at inappropriate moments, and it is utterly bizarre and it is very strange. Even the Medicare for All thing, go back and look at that. She comes out of nowhere saying, my crowd, my team doesn't know this, but I'm going to be for Medicare for All. Yes. And it's like, why are you laughing about that? Are you for it or not? And this is not something that people get out there and laugh about. It's actual serious policy that people are trying to get so they don't necessarily have all of these healthcare bills. We can cut the number and the expense of healthcare in the country, and each and every person, regardless of who that person is, they could be the poorest man on the planet and yet get stellar healthcare. Because at the very least, they are an American. And by our standards, at the very least of us, that's what they get. It's not a giggling matter. None of those things were giggling matters. Some of those behaviors were utterly atrocious that Kamala Harris was engaged in, not giggling material. Yet and still, we have another bout of the giggles. And this time, just as inappropriate, especially considering what Democrats are dealing with. The border is a mess. Joe Biden comes in, coronavirus starts to go down, more vaccinations start to take place, and all of a sudden, people show up at the border. Now, Donald Trump snarling, stay away, stay out. Well, Joe Biden is not doing that. Even though he's not saying snarling, stay away, stay out, he is on every post screaming, don't come. It is not time yet. This is a poor time to come to America. But for whatever particular reason, Joe Biden and his people are entirely, utterly, and completely shocked that that hasn't worked. Joe Biden changed a policy, and the policy that he changed was basically saying, I'm going to take the ethical choice that if a child has to cross alligators, duck bullets, cross gangs, get carried in a caravan, and still make it here alive with their digits intact, we will keep them if they are unaccompanied. And so what you had was all of these unaccompanied minors, I think it was like 50,000 recently, showing up at the border, needing to be housed, needing to be taken care of. And because of the COVID restrictions, there was less border space than what would typically be had. Donald Trump expanded the number of beds. So the issue wasn't the expanded number of beds. The issue was you just created a policy that created an incentive for people to come here and send their kids here unaccompanied. And so that's what they did. And now you have not been able to live up to the things that you attacked Donald Trump for. And whatever you want to think of Donald Trump, and they could say, oh, Donald Trump didn't care and Donald Trump was mean-spirited about it. Whether he cared or whether he was mean-spirited about it is almost less important, considering those kids are in horrific conditions because of a policy that you took. So Kamala Harris is asked about the border, and she gives this heartfelt message. But I want you to see what happens immediately after the heartfelt message, because that's the part that sticks. And somebody posted this as if it made up for the other one. But this only makes the other one worse, because it makes this seem inauthentic and artificial And it's the exact reason why blacks didn't like her. It's the exact reason why she didn't do squat in the primaries. And it's the exact reason why Kamala Harris was eaten alive by Tulsi Gabbard. Inauthentic and fake. And that laugh is one of the fakest things on the planet. And it always aggravates the shit out of me every time I see it, which is why I'm doing this video now to show how fake it is. The Biden administration has caused a crisis at the border. Call it what it is. And by the way, it's not just the Biden administration. The media only ever talks about this from the bandwidth of what is Biden going to do and what is Biden going to do. And Republicans will point and say, hey, look at what's taking place at the border, because they would say you did that with Donald Trump, so we're going to do it now. But they didn't give a shit about what was taking place at the border with Donald Trump. Donald Trump was basically had an American version of camps with ICE as a Gestapo force running bananas. Well, Biden gets in. Biden takes a policy that regardless of whether it's ethical or not, whether it's ethical or not, it's a human conception in regards to a point of view, a relative point of view, and that's just a point of view. What's real is cause and effect, not that, the morality of it. And the cause and effect in this very specific situation, despite the fact that this was doing something that was supposed to be a positive, ended up being a negative. Yeah, let's have a conversation about it. They are using the misery of these kids for their own political whims and political expedience. The Democrats did it when Trump was doing this, and now Republicans are doing it with Democrats. It is so callous, to put it mildly. These kids are risking life and limb to get into the country, and the only bandwidth that the mainstream media has to talk about it is basically Republicans and Democrats, missing the point that our drug laws, the drug consumption in the United States, meaning the pain and angst, the not getting a higher paycheck, the depression, all of those things lead to higher drug use. That drug use has to be satisfied from somewhere, and guess where? South America. More importantly, the coups that were propagated by our governments, both administrations. And it's not like we learned our lesson, because we're still trying to knock over Venezuela, and we're still acting as if the government in Bolivia that has just now come back from a coup that the United States had backed. And by the way, even Lula da Silva, he was put in jail with information with the CIA backing him being put in jail. So you need to understand what I'm saying here. The United States has been intimately involved in destabilizing that region. How many people have died in Brazil? What, 200, 300,000? And would that number have taken place if Lula was in office? No, I don't believe it for a moment. Don't believe it for a moment. If Lula was in office and the United States told Brazil that they shouldn't take the Chinese or the Russian vaccine, Lula would have told them to go fuck themselves. Bolsonaro was willing to sell Brazilians out and let those Brazilians die, as opposed to getting them a Chinese vaccine. The people in Brazil wanted it. The United States told Bolsonaro don't do it, and Bolsonaro chose not to do it. We bragged about it in our Health and Human Services report. That's what I'm talking about here. At the end of the day, what we've been doing and the operations that we've been taking to undermine the various governments in South America has been utterly appalling. The mainstream media doesn't bring that up. Don't talk about it. Meaning, they don't talk about it in a contextual way that would ever help Americans to understand their world beyond just thinking that, well, those countries are just basket cases. They're not just basket cases. You have intimately involved in the destruction and destabilizing of those countries as recently as Bolivia, and even before Bolivia, Honduras. And by the way, with Honduras, the United States didn't like Zelaya, so when the military escorted him out in his pajamas, we didn't like to call it a coup. Hillary Clinton backed the new person, which set that country on fire. 80% of the heroin that takes place, that goes, of the cocaine that goes through South America, goes through Honduras. The media doesn't ask whether or not that coup was productive and beneficial. And if the answer is no, then why are you backing other coups in these other areas? Kamala Harris is asked the question. She gives a heartfelt And almost immediately on a dime, like a mother who scolded her child, and then all of a sudden, hello, yes, how are you doing? She does that in the opposite way. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you the opportunity. I appreciate you allowing me the opportunity to do it. Considering that YouTube has gotten far more treacherous in regards to trying to do this job, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have a much harder time that are not going to be able to make it at all, considering the difficulty that left-wing media is having on YouTube now. They're cutting subscribers somehow, and they're also cutting the number of people who are viewing the content. That's it. That's not going to stop me from doing the news. And if my like percentage is up, then at the very least I know that the video is in and of itself good.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we were left with a very challenging situation. And, let me start by saying I think we all agree, and Secretary Mayorkas said it a number of times this weekend, let's get these kids out of CBP custody, get them into HHS custody. We've got to treat this issue in a way that is reflective of our values as Americans and do it in a way that is fair and is humane. But we have to meet the moment, and there's a lot of work going into that, and we expect to have success, but it's going to take a lot of work. I mean, again, we were presented when we came in with some serious challenges.
That's not true, actually. Of all the things and all the issues that Trump failed on, if you remember, the immigration one, he was losing various lawsuits and everything else, but he did up the number of beds. The challenges that they had to do with COVID, 1, COVID going down, 2, and Joe Biden basically throwing out a welcome mat by telling people that he would accept unaccompanied minors, 3. And of all of those, if you take off the coups, the drug policy of the United States, the drug use of the United States, those things meaning propagating certain gangs and everything else to fuel the needs for the drugs that we're looking for, then this was caused on some level by you guys. Just because you do good doesn't necessarily mean that the consequence is going to be good. Oftentimes, when people do good, the reason that they're considering do good is because they took a consequence or they took a hit in order to make that work. The problem here, though, is that is it a good idea if you end up with kids in that situation? And I guess to me, the answer is no. And why wasn't Joe Biden bright enough to know that taking that position was going to have that effect, especially since he's been in government for all of those years? Kamala Harris, solemn. We have to lead with our values. We need to lead with our values. Fair enough. They always talk about their values. Nobody knows what that means, but they need to lead with our values. The U.S. values are basically using the vaccines for political effect. Meaning, if you want to get the vaccine, if your population is dying and ill and asphyxiating, then yeah, we're going to have political objectives that we want to accomplish for you to get those vaccines. And even if it's a country that is on a naughty list, we will push our allies not to use those vaccines, even though those allies like Germany and like France and like Brazil are dying, asphyxiating in hospitals. That's if they're lucky to even get to the hospital. She's asked a secondary question. Are you going to the border? Straightforward question, right? I mean, you're telling us in this heartfelt way about the migrants. You're telling us we got to lead with our values. And the reporters just want to know, are you going to see it for yourself? What do you think she says? What do you think she says?
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again. Yeah.
Hell no, I ain't going to no border. Hell no. There's a crisis at that border. Have you seen the pictures? I don't want to see that shit. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. Hell no. Look at her ass. Her eyes get really, really big when she has to answer this. She's like, hell no, I ain't going to no border. Let's.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Her eyes got really like, no, fuck no. I'm not going to no goddamn border. There's a crisis at that border. Have you seen all of those unaccompanied kids? I mean, they're everywhere. They have those sticky hands. Their noses is right. Some of them are crying and laying on the floor and whatnot. I don't need that in my life. I'm vice president. And I'm going to be president soon when Joe Biden falls down the steps for the last time. Okay, that's a low blow.
Not today.
Migrant kids are funny. Migrant kids are so fucking funny. Kamala Harris. Let's play this one more time. I love this clip. This clip is awesome. Inappropriate laughter 101.
Not today. But I have.
Not today. Not today. Not today. I am taking my ass somewhere else that is not going to be with all of those sticky finger kids. But I'm going to go later. We're going to go later at some point. We're going to go later. We're going to go later. The fakeness is aggravating to me. And so, yes, I'm taking shots. That's where I'm at right now. Let's see. We have people. Fun topic for us nerds. If countries were, Widowverse characters, which big bad would the United States be? So when the bringer, God, what was that character in, the character in Angel? And it was when he was like the end of time or something like that, the end of all things. And it's this huge being that comes back. He has like hoof feet and everything else. And he blackens the sunlight. And Angel can touch him. Faith goes to fight him. Slayer. She's a slayer. She goes to fight him. She is cosmically given that name. That's not her putting on airs. Cosmically, she is known. Her in the fabric of the fucking framing of the universe, she was built as the slayer. That's what I'm trying to get across. She goes and fights this thing, and it beats the living shit out of her. And not just beats the living shit out of her. At one point, it stops and it looks at her as she's laying on the ground, writhing in pain, broken up, bones broken and whatnot. And he asks her, is this all you are? Think about that. Is this all you are? Like, I've heard all of this about the Slayer. And is this it? Oh, that's so fucking brutal. Because you must understand, a person who's going to be a Slayer is going to have this kind of concept in their head of how badass they are. And this person who is that badass, who basically 98% of whatever they encounter, they can crush it. Not even thinking twice. And again, built in the fabric of the universe, they're the Slayer. And for him to beat her down like that, and not it is hard to get across the level of the beating that she took. And after that beating, him standing over her is like, this is all you are. Oh, man. We will be that guy. We'd be that guy. When you're spending $1 trillion on the military, that's the guy to which we are. Sci-Fi Nation, how is the new decriminalization working in DR? Now that I don't know. I haven't seen since it passed. Sci-Fi Nation, I'm not quite sure. DR, unless we're thinking of something else. Oh, Oregon. I don't know. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything else about it. I don't have too much. I think we have erroneous ideas about drugs. Now, no, I'm not a doctor. Yeah, my wife says you say shit sometime with the level of authority that that you don't have. But nevertheless, most of the time I am right. My reasoning and my rationale for this has to do with some research that came out where the guy was making the point that says we assume a capitalist society because that's the society which people are in. And because we assume it is like water, fish in water, it doesn't necessarily see how these currents affect human beings. So a person who's a drug addict, we just accept that that person is a drug addict and that person either uses or don't use, but we don't necessarily accept the environmental circumstances that incentivize that person to either use or not use. And if you change the environmental factors of that particular individual, that person may actually not go or need that drug. It's possible that that drug is a crutch based on the environmental outcomes, meaning where they are, what they're doing at that particular moment, and they are being influenced by that for the betterment or the detriment. If the guy was in a different spot, that wouldn't take place. And that's kind of the point I'm getting at. The people who are dealing with this stuff, ultimately they end up back in the same situation because unless they're going to get an extra job, unless they're going to get some added income, unless they're going to be able to move into a different particular area of the society, they're back where they started. They're left to their own devices. And even if you have a program that helps every so often where you're going to talk to them, yeah, you're talking to them, but they're still going back to their same situation. Until you get into the point where you can change the primary situation of the individual, you're going to have problems. And more importantly, issues of depression, issues of poverty. You realize kids that are born in poverty have like less brain mass. Like all of that stuff takes place in our society because we accept this type of premise of some people having ungodly amounts of cash and other people having ungodly lack thereof. That's my rationale anyway. All right, I'm going to end this here. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say subscribe. God damn it, you got me fucking talking about comic books. Or Josh Whedon's universe. All right, thanks all. And by the way, make sure you subscribe, guys. And I'll talk to you in a few.